but let me remind you, we do Startup Buzz every Thursday at 5 o'clock. It's our way to give back to the startup ecosystem, whereby we want to ensure that over a period of the year, we have covered each and every topic. Today's topic is so important, so interesting, and absolutely relevant. It can make or break a startup. And please stay tuned. Remember, every Thursday, 5 p.m., CII Startup Buzz. Over to you, Kumar. Kumar is the moderator and Omkar is the speaker. So they're going to take it over from here. But every Thursday, 5 p.m. online, CII Startup Buzz. Thank you.
Thanks, Ninad. And, I must congratulate you, under your leadership to sort of get the series going. And like you rightly mentioned, some great speakers, great topics being covered. Just like this one, we have Mr. Omkar Pandharkame, who is the Chief Strategy Officer at Supervity AI, which is a leader in enabling Fortune 500 companies and various governments in their AI transformation journeys. Omkar was previously the director of Atlas Venture Labs, which is the entrepreneurship ecosystem at Atlas. And he was the CEO at Beehive, which is an enterprise SaaS company, amongst various other roles. Omkar, great to have you with us on this session. And I'm sure you're going to help us now understand on how to craft a killer pitch.
Yeah.
So, all yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Kumar, for that introduction. And thank you, Ninad, for organizing this. I believe that this is extremely helpful for the entire entrepreneurship community. And kudos to CII for putting all of this together. I'm delighted to speak on a subject which I have learned through a lot of battle scars about how do you create a pitch, how do you create a pitch deck. And I want to elaborate and extrapolate the idea of how do you deliver a killer pitch, not only to that 3 minutes what you get at a Y Combinator stage, or a half an hour, 1 hour detailed presentation what you have with your investors, but I want to share certain perspectives what I have gained along the way of getting yes from investors, getting no from investors, partners, sales. I believe overall the underlying, the fundamental strategy remains the same as long as you're communicating your right value. Over the next 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to risk a monologue, but at the end of the monologue, I hope that it creates enough fodder for people to reflect, to think, and possibly also learn from my experience. There's not going to be death by PowerPoint, but I've tried to make sure that the fonts are big and the graphics are funny. So let me quickly share my screen. Yeah, I hope my screen is visible.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so it's all about crafting a killer pitch and raising seed money like a boss. So I'm gonna bust a little bit of myths around fundraising so that we understand fairly well about how do you actually approach building a pitch, because most of the time your pitch deck should reflect a bunch of things. And time and over again, a lot of people get it wrong. There is so much content available online, but a lot of times people find it very difficult to nail that pitch, right? I want to put a disclaimer for myth number one. Not every investor out there is as smart and intelligent as Ninad. Most of the investors out there are gamblers. So the first gamblers in a nice way. The first thing what I want to put across is start treating an investor as somebody who's putting money based on what you're selling to him, right? Number two is that there is no specific formula to valuations. I think a lot of times people get hell-bent on certain valuations, numbers. To be completely candid, valuation is that you pick a number from the air and that is what you and your prospective investors agree to. That essentially is the valuation. There can be number of inhibitions of people to say that my startup is worth $10 million, $1 million, $100,000. But to a large extent, there is no formula for valuations. Number three is that investment is required for startup success. One of the biggest myths out there in the industry. There have been great stories like Zohos of the world, which have been able to scale, make a deep impact not only in the commerce world but on the society by not raising any kind of external funding, external stakeholders. So, as we are clear with these three myths, I want to start about how do you actually make a great presentation, right? Your killer pitch is like an art. And what do I mean an art? Art for me stands for authority, relationship, and trust. If your pitch is able to reflect the authority what you have in the subject, if your pitch is able to build a very good relationship with your prospect, and at the end of the day, if you're walking home not only with the check of the person but also with the trust, that is a definition of a great killer pitch. So let's understand what your pitch should have, right? So whenever, this is ideally my first ever stint at raising money. I'm like, please give me a startup. Please give me money. I have a startup. But most importantly, does your pitch deck reflect the answers of these three questions? And I want to dive in a little bit more about these questions, right? So, key questions to answer throughout your pitch, right? Your pitch can be 20 slides long or 3 slides long. As long as it is able to answer these three questions, I think it puts you in an extremely good place. So, number one is how big is your market? And there's a very simple answer to this particular question. The answer is that it needs to be big and growing, right? When I'm talking about, even if you have a bad product or a mediocre product, but a growing market, it works much better than an excellent product, but a small and a slow market, right? Accelerating a market is much more difficult than having, accelerating a bad product. Accelerating a bad product into an average product into a good product is going to be simply easy as compared to having a slow market out there. So the first question what your pitch should reflect is your understanding of the market. How well do you know that market? Is it big? Is it growing? If it is not big, if it is not growing, it is very difficult to carve out a particular niche and impress upon the investor on how great this can be. So how do you calculate the market? There are a bunch of rules. I like to have it like people into pesa into frequency. How many people, how much average money are they going to spend, and at what frequency? If this number is great and year on year, the growth of this is significant. It's double digit CAGR, it's double digit cumulative accumulated growth rate. I think that's a beautiful market to be in. So you always start off with your pitch talking about the market, and market encapsulates your problem, right? Everybody talks about start off with the problem. A problem where people are willing to pay money is the market, right? Now, these three questions needs to be answered right off the bat. What is your market size? What is your CAGR? And what are some key trends which are driving the market? What are certain tailwinds you're seeing within the entire macroeconomic space, which are pushing this market to a double digit growth, or even in some cases, a triple digit growth, right? What is the market size? Your regular jargons of TAM, SAM, SOM. Is it a multi digit CAGR? And are there 3 to 4 really strong social, political, economic trends which are pushing this market? If I am able to know my market inside out, then it shows authority, the first A. Knowing my market inside out in the first half of the first one third of my presentation will completely determine that, hey, you know what? I am talking to somebody who knows the market. Knowing the market is half the battle won, right? The second half is about how good your product is. But again, coming back, right? Bad product, great market, you still win. But a great product, a slow and very regressive market, very difficult to end up winning. The next part is showing investors how great the market is more important than showing the investor how great you are, because it's synonymous in showing how great you are the moment you're able to tell the investor that, hey, you know what, I have complete understanding of the market. Currently I'm in the AI agents market. If you ask me anything about how Fortune 500 companies are going to the next orbit by employing AI employees, I'm consuming that knowledge inside out every day for 10 to 20 minutes, right? So the best master of your market demonstrates authority. Second question, what you have to answer in your pitch deck, right? How unique is your solution? And this answer typically has three angles to it, right? Either I have better technology, or I have disruptive business model, or there are cost-effective solutions, right? Do not say that we have all of it, right? I cannot have better technology and a disruptive business model and a cost effective solution. That is too much noise, very little signal to actually identify what makes you different. And whatever makes us different needs to be explicitly stated and explicitly invested into, right? How do I define better technology? That, hey, it is very, very difficult to replicate by my competitors. Or how I say that, how disruptive is my business model? How much money is required in order to displace this entire current existing business model? If my business model is going to displace the current economics by significant margin, by very little investment, that's how we define a disruptive business model. Or a cost effective solution, that how much time will it take for my competitors, the current incumbents in the market, to start catching up, right? If it's going to take them more than 4 business quarters, 1.5 years plus, it's a beautiful, beautiful solution. Right. So how unique is your solution needs to be the second part of your pitch, where you are able to go ahead and talk better technology, or better disruptive business model, or cost effective solution. And you better get married to one of it. As I said, if you end up saying all three, there's a very high likely chance that you're going to come across as jack of all trades, and unfortunately master of none. A lot of people do not talk about competition in their pitch deck. I genuinely believe having competition is a good thing. It talks about that the market is validated. It talks about that people are accustomed towards paying for a particular service, and or a particular product, and all you have to do is put a better alternative, a cheaper alternative, or a more useful alternative in front of that competition, and you have a market for yourself. A very big red flag in your pitch deck is when you say that, hey, we don't have a competitor, or a very misinformed place of what you have. I see all the fancy quadrants where your company is always in the top right quadrant. It's very delusional most of the time, but it's much better to say that these are the incumbents in the market, and either one of these three things is great enough to kind of displace these incumbents in the market. The place at which you can raise your investment, right? It should reflect at the place where you are, right? The chances of you raising an investment is fairly low if you're at an MVP stage, at a POC stage, and extremely high at a traction stage. And I'll come to it in a bit in my second half, right? Sharing your product building journey develops relationship. Very unlikely that you're going to get your investment or your deal cracked in the first time you're talking, right? The next startup I want to start, let's say I'm blessed to have an investor like Ninad who's backing me. I will not expect Ninad to back me on day one, but I will go ahead, develop a relationship, start sharing my product building journey. This is the market I want to attack. This is the market I want to attack with this kind of a technology. And this is how far along are we. You start building that relationship, money comes easy, right? People want to invest in people who they have authority. And the second thing is about relationship. The third is, of the most important question, very difficult to answer, is why are you the best person to create this, right? Like, if I'm having a conversation with Kumar, it's a no-brainer. Kumar is a leader in neuroscience, and it reflects, it's very easy. But young entrepreneurs, they do not have that much credibility. And most of the times people end up having a very, very bad answer over here, is that, I have passion, grit, and determination. And that's the reason why you should invest in my startup. But unfortunately, that is all bullshit, because I cannot really quantify how much passion, how much grit, determination you have, right? Do you have 500 kilos, 20 kilos? Very difficult to quantify. But a better metric to actually show that why you the best person to build this particular thing is that you have to talk about, have you built a successful startup before, right? Are you a former founder? The second thing is that, have you worked in the same industry for a long period of time, that when you launch yourself in the market, it is very, very easy for you to get the best vendors. It's very easy for you to get the best rates. You already have the distribution channel figured out, and all you have to do is activate your idea in the current network what you have, because you belong to that industry. You spend donkey years in that industry. Or the third part is, especially for young entrepreneurs, that you have unique insights about the market which no one knows, right? You have taken those efforts, spent a lot of time at the grassroots level, and finally figured out that, hey, this particular insight is hiding in plain sight, and I want to capitalize that. This also reflects the first point what I was talking about, that how well do you know your market? Because I have some unique insights towards it. If I have one of these three things, it shows a very, very good reflection that this person is worth the investment. Now, all we have to do is take all these three questions and push it into a beautiful presentation deck, right? More often than not, a lot of times people waste time, resources, and making it look pretty, start looking at 1,000 templates, hire $500 designers to actually go ahead and make them a beautiful deck. Aesthetics is secondary, right? Content is the king. And again, do not try to oversell yourself, but just try to answer these three questions in the deck. If these three questions are reflected well, the probability increases a lot. So it comes to the last point, which is having one of these three things builds trust. If your pitch deck reflects authority, if your pitch deck has the foundations of building relationship and trust, then it becomes very, very easy. I'm gonna pause this because I'm gonna get into a very nice interaction with Kumar, but you know, I just want to leave with five things about whenever you're raising money, right? Number one, never ever give out more than 25% in your first round. It's very naive for a lot of first time founders. Ideally, it's between 7% to 20%, a great reward for early stage angels to actually, take a sizable part of the business and also give good breathing space for the founder. Not raising smart money, extremely important. The fundamental question is that, can investors help you beyond their money, right? At the end of the day, money is fairly accessible. What is difficult to access is the time, the insights, right? Like, I just want to acknowledge that, I had Ninad, and I still continue to have Ninad as one of my mentors, one of the earliest investors in my last startup, and money was the last thing I benefited from Ninad. Most benefits I got was through his connects, through his advice, about him interviewing my sales guys, to all the way giving me real hardcore sales lessons, right? The third one is selling the idea more than you. At the end of the day, your pitch deck, no matter how much you're talking about the market, the relationship, the trust, you are going to get invested. I still remember my first pitch deck to my last pitch deck, from a pre-seed pitch deck to a Series A pitch deck, everything changes. None of your business plans realize, right? It's a hard truth. Sometimes I just want to wind back into my pre-seed check and just laugh at it, right? What are the kind of projections we did? But it was the conviction through which I was able to, share those projections is what, gets you invested. Exaggerations, unrealistic predictions, there are two types of pictures I've come across: the delusional overconfident one, or the naive shy ones, right? You have to be right in the middle. You don't have to be crossing over the bridge of confidence to delusional, nor do you have to be naive about what you don't know about in the market, right? And funding doesn't mean successful. And one thing what also I realized is that if you truly believe, right, your what you're working on, and you've packaged it well into your pitch deck, investors need you more than you need investors, right? If you try to kind of inhabituate or envision yourself as a person that you are the golden ticket to this investor, right? I decide which investors gets 1,000x their money. I decide which investors get ultra rich. That is the power of my idea, not the other way around, where investors start looking at you as that kind of a horse, what they're trying to. This reflects in the pitch very, very significantly. It really determines your confidence that, I am giving the investor the opportunity to make money. The investor is not giving me the opportunity to make my dream realize. I'm going to do that irrespective, right? It is not arrogance, it is just self-belief. And this gets reflected in the pitch. And this is what I've realized over a time. So that was my 17-minute monologue. I hope I was able to cover everything. These are all my battle scars, what was very reflective of what I've done. So yeah.
Great stuff, Omkar. I think you had some real high notes there in terms of what are some of the key areas that entrepreneurs should look for. There are a bunch of questions coming up on my screen from people who are viewing this both on Zoom as well as on CII's Icon platform. I'm
Yeah.
going to start with one of my own.
Hmm.
Um, we get a lot of folks who are working on AI and who want to understand from a neural networks perspective, me being a neuroscientist, on how we can perhaps help them think about AI a little differently. There's been a lot of buzz where obviously not just entrepreneurs using AI to formulate their pitches. So you've got ChatGPT, you've got Gamma AI, a bunch of other tools where you can make a great presentation, pitch deck, whatever you want. What's your advice, one, to investors who are investors who are looking at these pitch decks and also entrepreneurs? And secondly, I also see investors now, much like recruiters,
Hmm.
sifting through pitch decks using AI, right? So, on a lighter note, will we have a situation where there's a pitch deck written by AI being sorted through by the investor's AI? And then what happens?
Yeah. I think that nobody wins, right? Because people get invested, not pitch decks, not the ideas per se. But I believe that I'm a big proponent of AI. Use it the way, if it helps you to create an unfair advantage, that's the nature of the beast, right? Um, I'll talk to you from a sales perspective, right? Whenever I have a big meeting, I always, take the LinkedIn of the person, everything, and then create a small little persona, capture all the buyer signals, and ask it to simulate a conversation for me and make me, ask the toughest questions, right? And that really prepares me for that meeting very well. So, for example, let's talk about Nina, the seasoned investor, right? And Nina has a fairly good footprint on the internet. Can I scrape through Nina's every interview? Can I scrape through Nina's every podcast and create a persona for me using custom GPT, bunch of open source tools, and simulate the most likely questions Nina will ask me in my presentation, and switch the role and ask it to evaluate it as well. I think that would prepare me significantly, right? Because that will also make me more confident about whether Nina's the right investor for me. Am I able to answer those questions? On the other side, if we ask Nina to open his inbox, I'm pretty sure that he's going to get like thousands and thousands of young budding entrepreneurs applying to Carpe Diem Ventures to get a meeting with him, right? And it's humanly impossible to actually meet all these investors. And most of the time, great pitches end up in anti-portfolio just because of plain oversight. There's nothing wrong with the founders, right? Or great ideas are just unread inboxes in investors' mails. I truly believe that. So I think there's investors should also invest, like how CV shortlisting happens based on the job description, or even lead scoring AI agents, right? Which will score the leads what we're getting on inbound. I think there, if I'm pretty sure investors are super smart, right? They would be doing it anyways, irrespective. But I like to imagine. Investors are
Uh,
trying to catch up, and the entrepreneurs also trying to catch up. But I'm pro that. And this one thing, what I mentioned about creating a personality of the investor you are pitching to, it works very well.
no, that's a great insight. Just taking one of the questions from the viewers. I don't know the name of the person, but he or she asked, how much detail should we give on financial projections versus storytelling?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, right? Storytelling takes you to La La Land, takes you to one-way ticket to utopia, that this is the world what we want to create, and then suddenly in the second half we see the traction of the of the startup, and then we realize, my God, that all was so dreamy. So I truly believe that paint the story on the basis of the traction what you've gotten, right? Don't just drift into La La Land if your traction does not allow you to drift to La La Land. I think projections, Trailing projections are important, but to a large extent, I think I'm echoing, right? Yeah. Trailing projections are important, but one of the most important part of the projections is month on month or year on year growth. If that is double digit, if that is significant, you take the license to paint whatever story you have. If your month on month or year on year growth is single digit, then you gotta really tight lip your storytelling. But storytelling in a manner where if you're able to transport the investor into the new world, what you're trying to create with the startup, if the investor is able to see and feel that, then take full license about it, right? And again, AI would definitely help you with that, right? We can outsource the creativity right now to AI.
I guess the answer also a bit depends on what stage of evolution are you in your journey. Are you at a, product creation stage
Yeah,
where, you don't have numbers to talk about, but really you just need to, sell that vision,
correct.
right? And also the kind of industry you're in. If it's an industry which is more tangible, where you can actually, get a sense of tangible numbers, market size,
Yeah,
it's different
yeah,
vis-a-vis something which is more aspirational and requires a leap of faith, right?
correct. Yeah,
So, but great point there.
yeah.
The next question is from Ame, and he says, should founders always include the exit strategy slide while they are pitching?
Uh, you know, as I said, the first pre-seed, like if you're doing it at a pre-seed stage, I would say it's very naive. It's a good conversation to have, but it's an extremely hypothetical conversation, right?
True.
As I said, that if I open my pre-seed deck right now, we both are gonna have a laugh at it, right? As compared to, let's say, my Series B fundraising deck right now. So I think it's very naive to actually have a hard exit strategy, but let it float in the probability space, right? Like, what's the exit strategy? It's one of the three, right? You either go IPO, you either get acquired, or you become like a lifestyle business, right? And you just buy out all your investors. Those are the three probabilities, anyways. So I don't think it's such an important slide to include. I think it's very naive, especially early stage. If you're at Series A plus plus, then definitely. But it's
Sure.
it's also very important to talk about, like, if you're building to sell. And I love Indian founders who build to sell, right? Like, build great traction and then sell to an incumbent, right? If that's strategy on day one, be completely candid about it, be completely transparent about it, right? I am building so that I could reach to a 5 million ARR, get X amount of traction, and sell it to an incumbent.
Got it. The next question is, how do we balance between explaining the product
Hmm.
vis-a-vis highlighting the business model?
Yeah, I think I put that in the slide as well, that showing how great the market is more important than showing how good your product is, because product is more dynamic than the market, right? So talking about being really hard sold onto, this is how my product is, this is how my product is going to evolve. Again, I think it's too early in the day, right? Like, all the startups sort of build the product on day one to product on like day 365 and day at the end of 3 years. Significantly different in terms of philosophy approach. It's the nature of the beast. So don't be so tied to the kind of product you're trying to explain. Again, I always encourage founders to talk more about the market and how the market's going to evolve. And this is the product what we're planning to enter the market with, rather than just like laying out the entire product roadmap in front of it. Because market will determine the product roadmap rather more than what you would want.
Someone's asked a very important question, I guess, simple but important. He says, how long should a pitch ideally be? 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or longer?
Oh, 3 minutes, right? 3 minutes is the global standard. Y Combinator does 3 minutes, Techstars does 3 minutes, and I genuinely think if 3 minutes is good enough to give a trailer, right? 3 minutes is a good reality check to know whether somebody wants to have further information or not. right? 3 minutes
Sure.
is optimal for attention, because normally if you're looking at even investors, typically in your pitch day, demo day format, they are overwhelmed by like 20, 30, 50 pitches, right? So I think 3 minutes, very crisp, traction, team, market, problem, market tailwinds, right?
Right. Um, we have a question from Sai. What's the best way to follow up with investors after a pitch?
Okay, yeah, great. So the second part, right, like relationship. If I am able to share my product building journey with my investors, I used to do one very important thing, right? Like I still remember those early days. Shamelessly, I used to put them on the newsletter list, right? I used to scrape back then, we did not have Geminis of the world to like scrape the whole thing. So I had a small RPA bot which used to go pick up all the email IDs, and then I just used to put them on the newsletter and very, very religiously check the open rates, right? So for example, I've had a meeting with the investor, boom, that person immediately gets a newsletter of me from my last week, and I keep on tracking whether he's opening my newsletter or not. And if he or she is, then there is a very good chance that I'll try pursuing a follow up with the responses to that newsletter, right? WhatsApps, I've never seen people respond to WhatsApps, right? You just gotta pick up the phone and call if you have the number. WhatsApp is like passive aggressive, like, hi, do you remember me from this event? Come on, there are like thousands of people.
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, we have a question from Rohit, who says, how can non-technical founders
Mhm.
pitch a tech product effectively?
This is a non-technical founder, right? Zero technical exposure, right? Masters in law, organizational psychology, PhD, economics, right? Um, Tech literacy is non-negotiable if you're building a tech product, right? You need to be literate about your tech product. Uh, that's very wishful thinking that somebody's going to invest in a tech product where there is no tech co-founder, right? No matter how beautiful Claude's new model is. But also at the same time, you can be completely transparent and say that, hey, I'm pitching one right now. I have kept some equity aside for a technical co-founder to come and get it. But it's a difficult path, right? If you're not able to attract a tech guy through the power of your um, vision, then very difficult to even go further with an investor. So I think difficult. Better before you approach an investor, try to find a tech co-founder. They're dime a dozen, especially after
Right,
all the layoffs which are happening.
right. Um, how do you grab investor attention in the first 2 minutes? That's the next question.
Yeah,
So since you said 3 minutes is the pitch,
yeah.
I guess we should alter the question, not in the first 2 minutes, maybe in the first 30 seconds.
30 seconds, right? I love starting with a hook, right? We are all victims of Houdini's psychology, right? At the end of the day, hooks work, right? Asking a question works, right? Kumar, when was the last time XYZ happened? Or probe that, do you know that we blah 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 blah? Or start off with a very controversial yet true fact about your market, right? If those hooks are not able to raise ears of people, then you got to make your hook more provocative. But provocative hooks, provocative questions which are true, grab investors' attention, right? You don't have to start with your product. You don't have to start with your market, but you just have to start with one provocative fact about your market, or a question which will really startle someone, right? Like, um, for us, when we talk about, we sell to GCCs, right? I'm just giving an example of Supervity. We sell to GCCs, right? And I start off with a customer use case that, we helped a European GCC reduce their headcount from 8,000 to 200 people, and they saved over $90 million. Do you want to know how? I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, how did a large company save $90 million? Definitely an interest, right? So I think those kind of things help attract attention. First 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And then you can start off with your story. I still
That's
remember
a
for
great idea.
Beehive, I used to start with, one quote which keeps me awake at night was Lew Platt's quote that, our company would be 90% more profitable if employees knew what they already knew, right? And then everybody was like, okay, what do you mean? So those are great segues.
That's interesting. Um, we've got somebody with a question who says, should we focus more on market size or on competitive advantage?
Market size, hands down. Market size, more than market size, the tailwinds which are there in the market, right? If the market is big enough, there is place for everybody. You don't even have to be competitive. It's very few markets are winner takes it all market, right? You can literally play across the segment. If the market is big enough, you can segment it, get married to a segment, and make millions out of it, right? If you're approaching a big market, there's space for everyone. If you're talking about really emphasizing on a competitive edge, then you're really looking at a market takes all winner takes all kind of a market, which is a risky market for any investor to actually pitch in. If it's a winner takes all market, there
Okay.
has to be elbow room for everyone.
Um, we have a really interesting question, I think, this next one, which says, should bootstrapped founders pitch differently than funded ones?
Now, bootstrap founder will become a funded founder after a good pitch. So, of course, one should take pride in being bootstrapped. It is a very difficult journey, but yeah, it's like every bootstrap fund in entrepreneur will become a funded entrepreneur right after a good tech. So.
Yeah. I guess a related question then is, how should a seed stage pitch differ from a Series A pitch?
Oh, that's a very good question. And pre-seed people invest on inside people. Pre-seed to seed, you're still investing in people. Series A is all about traction and market leadership, right? A clear way to market leadership, right? We raise a Series A. We just talk about that last 3 years we've been growing. We're just talking about our growth, and we're talking about how with this Series A we have a clear part to market leadership. My seed stage is all about that, why am I the best person? Like whatever I spoke about is great guidelines for seed stage. But Series A, if you're talking a lot about you as a person and very less about like your year on your growth or your clear path to market leadership, then I think it doesn't work. So this is the core distinction, I believe.
Um, we've got a question on what's the best way to address weaknesses or risks in a pitch?
Yeah. Like I love the definition of startups, right? By de facto, it's a risky affair, right? So it's an irrational economic decision for anybody to start a startup. The probability is against your favor. The way we address risk is very, very like good risk mitigation through people, right? Because at the end of the day, you build people, people build businesses. Risk normally comes through competition. Risk normally comes through, market changes. Let's say what happened to Dream 11 right now, right? There's just one change in the law, and a unicorn goes belly up. So over here, I think the best way to address risk is that these are the kind of people we have within the team which are able to counter those risks, right? Risk cannot be countered by product. Risk can only be countered by people, their expertise. So I think I would answer risk questions with people.
The next question is really, really interesting. It says, how should founders react if an investor interrupts or challenges their numbers?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just thinking when was the last time that happened? I think I admire interruption. That means that there is genuine excitement and the investors listening for starters. So that's a good one. But I think if the investor challenges the numbers, I would put the onus on the entrepreneur that they have not explained it well, right? We see a lot of Shark Tank, and it's very common to see also on Shark Tank that people goof up their numbers, and they're not very well grounded with what exactly they're talking about. I think if you've goofed up with the numbers and the investor kind of highlights it, rather than covering up, acknowledging that mistake will give more faith to the investor than really just saying that I'm trying to cover it up, right? Interruption, as I said, great sign. Investors listening, investors really challenging with the purpose of knowing more is always better than challenging with the purpose of shutting you down. So entrepreneurs need to know that difference.
And a related question is from Nikita. I think she asks, how confident can one be with financial projections considering the uncertainties in an early stage startup?
Yeah. Um, so I actually learned this from Ninath, right? Three projections you have to talk about, right? One is the realistic one is, achievable one, and one the ambitious one. So whenever you're talking about your financial projections, you should always share that in worst case scenario, this is how we are gonna grow. In the
Mhm.
current state of affairs, this is how we're gonna go. And if we have market tailwinds and really good execution, this is the most ambitious way. So talking about scenarios actually help in financial projections, right? So don't just go with one financial projections. Go with a doomsday, go with a real day, and go with a utopic projection.
Sure. There are two questions which I thought are quite closely related. One's from Rohit, who asks, how much traction or proof of concept is enough to convince investors? And
Mhm.
then there's a second question from somebody on, do investors prefer numbers and metrics more than vision and passion? Perhaps
Yeah,
you could just take these two together.
yeah. So I just want to share one quick thing for this because I had it in my slide. 1 second. Right. So this is what I realized, that if you're an experienced founder, you can raise it at an idea level, right? You have raised money before, you have returned investor money. Thankfully, if I go back to Ninad and say I have a new startup, Ninad knows me well. At an idea stage, I should be able to raise, right? At an MVP stage, you're able to raise if you have fancy college degrees, and that's a true reality, right? There's nothing to be spiteful about it. Stanford grad, Harvard grad, IIT grad, MVP level, people are going to push in the money. You have to build crazy tech for it. You're able to raise money at a POC stage if there is, especially in enterprise world, if you have a design partner onboarded, right? You have a big brand, big name who has shown faith in you and is doing a bunch of POC for you. Early traction, you're experiencing your early inbound traffic, early conversions, very less churn rate, and the last is the best place if you have signs of repeat customers. That's a beautiful place to raise money. So you can raise money across the spectrum as long as that you fulfill the ones in this category. If you have repeat customers and you're operating in a large market, you can raise money. So I just wanted to showcase this slide.
So we have two final questions. We've almost come to the end. Should founders share confidential details like IP or some unique strategies in their pitch?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very naive of entrepreneurs to think that sign an NDA with us first. If you're gonna have a trust but verify approach from day zero, especially with investors who de facto kind of become your partners, it's difficult unless it's like really deep tech, which I still see that you should just go with the spirit of collaboration. This is my personal opinion, right? Spirit of collaboration and spirit of enterprise, that be transparent with the investors. But it also depends that have you done enough research on the investors, right? Have you spoken to the portfolio founders of that investors? If they have great things to say, that should give you a good check to actually go. So no need to sign all these NDAs. Be transparent when you are pitching. uh, Reveal the things on as required basis, but also at the same time, don't keep some any hidden aces or something. There are no hidden aces. All the cards are on the table while you're dealing.
And the last question, since we are talking about killer pitch, the question is around what's one killer tip to
Hmm.
stand out in a room full of startups who are pitching?
Hmm. Think I'll just like kind of counter it by saying that it's not important to stand out, because when you're thinking of standing out, you're looking at all the other competitors as all the other startups as your competitors, right? Money is not a fairly limited resource. To a large extent, money is unlimited. Enough investors out there in the world. I think a killer tip is, do not be blinded by flamboyance. Do not be blinded by making a long lasting impression. It is juvenile. It is very, comes across as desperate. I'm going to give cliche wisdom, but it has always worked, is that authenticity just wins, right? If you're not comfortable in English, pitch in your native language. Language doesn't matter. Putting being somebody who you are not doesn't work. Authenticity always wins. It might not help you in immediately, but if you're authentic enough, you literally attract the investors who really want to invest in you just because of you, right? Unlike, I forgot that lady's name, the one who created the biggest scandal in the Bay Area. Elizabeth, I forgot what was her name, her last name. She used to put on a hoarse voice. She used to pretend that somebody else. So yeah, authenticity helps you stand out anywhere.
Great. Well, we'll bring this session to an end now. Thank you so much, Omkar. I'm sure after these points that you provided to our audience members, they will be making killer pitches. I only think about the investors now. They'll probably have too many good pitches and not enough funds to sort of spread around with all of them.
Yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for everyone who's tuned in, for being a lovely audience, some great questions, some great interaction. Please do remember this is part of the CII Startup Buzz series, which is 5 p.m. every Thursday, and I'm sure we'll have a great one next week as well, and we continue to sort of move along in the series. Thank you, Omkar, once again.
Thank you, Kumar, so much. It was nice talking to you. And
Likewise.
thank
Take
you,
care.
everybody. Bye.